Okay, so internal or university-based scholarships. So I used Prairie State as an example in our foundation, just the link and kind of the basic criteria. So university-based scholarships, when they call it a scholarship, it's almost always GPA-based or merit. So they usually use the term merit. Um, in Illinois, at private universities, it's very often that the GPA scholarship is automatic. And some Illinois public universities have started doing automatic GPA-based scholarships also. But not everyone does. The way that it is done varies from school to school significantly. So always be checking directly with the university that you're looking into by speaking with their admissions office and kind of the notes at the bottom. So you want to look in their transfer admissions webpage, their financial aid webpage. They usually have dedicated scholarship webpage. So searching for these, looking for from the transfer admissions pages, they usually have a lot of these things linked. And then as a backup, go out of their webpage and just Google the name of the school and scholarships, and if you have a specific major. So the GPA scholarships are usually separate from major, and some schools they're automatic, and some schools you still have to apply. The GPA scholarships are almost always partial scholarships, and I can see a real variation. So I'm going to show a GSU example later that they're increasing their scholarship amounts for transfer students with an associate's degree starting in the fall to $6,000 a year if you have that 3.5 or higher. And their total tuition is around $13,000 a year. So that's a good amount. Like if you're not worrying about housing costs, then the out of pocket or the amount that grants need to cover is around $7,000 plus books and any other costs. Now, Loyola and DePaul are an example of, they also have automatic scholarships for GPA, and they're kind of an example where it becomes a little more expensive. Even after you qualify for their highest amount of automatic scholarships at Loyola and DePaul, I commonly see students that have that they still need to pay $20,000 a year if they're commuting, or even $30,000 a year if they want to live on campus after grants and scholarships. They still have 20 to 30 grants. So it could really vary by school, the amount. I'm going to be talking to you guys about how to find those outside scholarships. So you can be looking to add to the partial scholarships, but always start with the university first. You tend to get the most money from them. You tend to be more likely that the scholarship applications you do that you're going to be getting it. So the automatic GPA ones, or if you're applying for the ones by GPA, don't stop there, then go on. Whatever major you're heading onto, so the middle of the slide, the major-based scholarships, those are usually ones that they let you stack or add on to their other scholarships, but those almost always require applications. So definitely be checking their financial aid and scholarship websites for more specific things you can be applying to. So always put your first efforts into whatever school you want to attend, making sure you know what their scholarships are, what their deadlines are, if you need letters of recommendation, getting those all in on time, and going from there. And then finding them, I kind of already touched on that. I'm going to show you guys some examples. So UIC has a couple options. And I'm switching to UIC's website. So the link, just choosing the link. If you are an incoming transfer student heading towards your first semester at UIC, you have a couple options you could be eligible for. These are one-time, they don't call it a scholarship or a grant, they call it a tuition waiver. Well, they say scholarship here, but then later they call it a tuition waiver. Look for every variation of the name. If a student is transferring in, has a 3.5 or higher GPA, was in Phi Theta Kappa before they transferred, and is going to be enrolled at UIC for at least 12 credit hours, they almost always require you to be a full-time student to be eligible for scholarships or for the full amount of scholarships. So that 12 credits or more is common. But if you meet these sort of criteria, you could be applying using their link and their application at the time, that you're transferring into UIC to apply for a one-time, one-semester tuition waiver. So I actually had a student get this one a few years ago. She said that took care of the first semester, and the grants that the person qualified for took care of the second semester. So that person's first year was okay. And then they just they applied, once you're at UIC, you then have even more options of scholarships to apply to. But UIC, to make it simple for transfer students, they have these two options. But also they have things in the major that students transferring in can be looking at. Heads up for the tuition merit award, if you have a 3 to 5 GPA and at least 45 credits, and you're going to be full-time with at least 12 credits at UIC in your first semester, you could also be applying for this. So not everyone that's eligible and applies gets it. It's limited, but a great thing to be looking for. All right. GSU Aim High was the scholarship that I just mentioned, about up to $6,000. This is a little hard. It kind of makes it look like they're talking about high school, but it is for transfer. So this is the Transfer Aim High Scholarship. They are blending, putting high school requirements for incoming freshmen and transfer students onto the same page. So it's your Prairie State GPA is expected to be required to be a 3.5 GPA or higher. And it says if you're coming from a community college right here, you also need to have your associate's degree, but then you could be qualifying for up to $6,000 a year. You will want to double check. So I said so this does say high school GPA. You will want to double check from GSU directly if this is something you're interested in about, is that the high school GPA, the Prairie State GPA, or both? Always hear it from them directly if there's any question. They have some more criteria that's very important. So I'm moving my mouse around while I talk. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'm highlighting the text while I'm talking so you can see. So you need to be full-time, that's common, resident of Illinois, US citizen. And if anyone is a DACA student, I do have some references later. Completing a FAFSA is common. So to get scholarship or grant money from universities, you pretty much always have to complete a FAFSA and have that on file because they want to make sure you're accessing any government money before they start awarding their own money. If you are not eligible to apply for FAFSA, there's some criteria where someone would want to, but they can't. Contact the school directly. They usually have an alternate way of documenting your income. And I know Prairie State does too. In Illinois, that's the RISE app for DACA students. But here GSU talks about your household income can't be more than 6 times the poverty rate. So I expect that they're going off of the poverty rate that I have linked in this presentation that I showed. But you can always confirm that directly with them. Okay. A couple other examples. I won't be able to click on every link, so you'll see me skipping some of them. But University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, the Carolina Covenant is something I've had a couple of Prairie State graduates get. One transferred, and according to that person, they got a full ride, and they've graduated since. Another one got this, and she actually got almost full rides at multiple schools, and she is now at a different school. But it was wonderful. I mean, the Carolina Covenant, if a student qualifies for this, it could be the full cost of attending, minus what can happen with things like that and like the North Carolina concept of doing this. I actually have a guest speaker coming in. I'm trying to line him up for the spring. I have recordings of when he came in the fall. There's about 70 schools throughout the United States that have no loan policies. If your income and if you is documented at a certain level and you get into these schools, they have a practice of awarding grants and scholarships to cover everything except for what you and your family are expected to be able to contribute on your own. So that's where that FAFSA EFC usually comes in. So if I were to attend UNC and my FAFSA showed I could pay for all but about $5,000, but it costs, say, $40,000 to attend there, the idea is that they would be covering scholarships, grants, and usually work study is in there. You're not obligated to work, but if you don't choose to work, then that would be a little more for loans. But they would be covering everything but the $5,000. So that one's a big side note. If you have an interest about the 70 schools that have no loan policies and don't want to wait for the guest speaker to come back, I have recordings from when we met. We did a 4-part series in the fall. So let me know, email me and let me know. Jackson State, I've had multiple students transfer on to this HBCU in Mississippi. everyone that's attended there has been so happy, but they're one of my favorites of scholarships. They have a Phi Theta Kappa scholarship that covers everything. So if you're a community college graduate, 3.5 or higher GPA, and you were in Phi Theta Kappa, it covers full tuition, full room and board, fees, and up to $500 a semester for books. I even had a Prairie State graduate under the scholarship at Jackson State, got to do a study abroad. So a lot of really great things. And then they also have one that's tuition only. It doesn't cover housing, but that's for people with a 3.0 or higher. So it's they have a couple of really great options. And the last time I talked to our Jackson State representative, he told me he believed that 6 Prairie State graduates in the last 7 or 8 years had gotten that full ride scholarship. So it's really something good to consider. I wanted to give you guys a visual. So I mentioned how schools can have scholarships for your GPA, can have need-based grants, and I think it's really nice to see how that all comes together. So Olivet Nazarene is a university south of us, in some parts of Prairie State District. They're only about a 25-minute drive away, like if people live around Crete. So they sent a John Doe, a kind of a fake financial aid award letter. It's for no real person, but these are real numbers. So what it's showing, and I'm going to move my mouse around kind of in the top right corner, the direct costs. So if someone wanted to be there for a year, live on campus, the total direct cost of tuition, fees, room and board. So we're not looking at the books, but it is housing and food and tuition and fees. Total direct cost is about $46,000, which is a lot. Now, if you were looking only at scholarships, someone with a 3.5 GPA and who joined Phi Theta Kappa would qualify for up to $21,000, $21,500. That's not enough to look at it by itself. So what they added in is a full picture. If someone has documented that they have the full need, so their family's EFC on a FAFSA 0, that they are not able to contribute to their education for the cost, they put in the full amount of the MAP and grant, Pell MAP and Pell Grant. Now they did this a year ago, so this is last year's numbers. They would put that up. It would be a little bit more this year. So the Pell and MAP grant, and then Olivet, this is something that doesn't usually get advertised. Some schools, not all do it, but they have a need-based grant. That's another $5,000 that student wouldn't have to pay back. So the parts you would have to take out loans or pay back for, they have factored in here $4,500 and $2,000. So that's $6,500. And that's leaving only another $2,000. So it's about $8,000 out of pocket that needs to happen after grants and loans. If you were a student with the highest GPAs, you were PTK, and you had documented the greatest economic need. All right. So that's just kind of a visual. And this is a simplified version of an award letter that you would get from a university after you've applied to them, you've applied to their financial aid, and they're letting you know how much you would need to be paying after scholarships and grants. And even more simplified, usually simplified, going back to the PowerPoint, that last point on the page, using the university's net price calculator, this is something most people don't know about. Every college and university has a net price calculator on its website. You can literally Google the name of the school in net price calculator, or if you are on their website, you can just, on the search, you can just search net price calculator. Somewhere on their website, you can get in and it asks you a series of questions. And it's a lot of things they ask for FAFSA. Number of people in your home, number that are in college at this time, family income. If you don't know your information, or if you have parents' information, you would want to have that around you when you're filling out the information. But what this does is you do not have to apply to the school to use the net price calculator. This gives you an unofficial way to get an idea of how much scholarships and grants you qualify for before you've even applied to the school. It could be a year or two before you're applying to the school. And then you can see what additional amount after the grants and scholarships, what amount that you'd have to be looking at getting outside scholarships from other organizations, or paying on your own, or taking out loans. So it's a great thing to be looking into to get a what if before you're even applying to a school. Okay, so I keep mentioning also outside scholarships. So how do you find outside scholarships? I think work hard, work smart, not hard, or work smart and hard, really. But just Googling around for it, you could find some things, but you could also spend a lot of time getting a lot of really bad information. There are some free search engines. So I'm moving around these first four um, bullet points. These free scholarship search engines are probably the better ones that I've come across. FastWeb, scholarships.com, Scholly. I'm still getting to learn more about Scholly, but I've read really great things about it so far. And then Unigo, a Prairie State graduate who transferred on to University of North Carolina for that free full scholarship. It covered everything with the Covenant program. He had found it through Unigo. So Unigo has a scholarship match. Pretty much all of these have functions where you can create a free account, answer questions about yourself, and then it's going to show you matches of programs or scholarships that you could be qualifying for. And then you usually click on a link, and then you can get usually to that group's or organization's information to be reading more about it and applying if it's time to apply. And if not, you're just researching ahead of time. Some people like in Unigo too, they also have, you can list by common categories like your major or your gender, your ethnicity. You can do that in all of these search engines. So one thing people worry about, and I don't blame you, is spam, because you could get spam. I can tell you for FastWeb, I signed up for an account with that a few years ago because I wanted to see if it looked like they were selling my email or if I was going to get a lot of spam. I got no spam. It lets you decline all the time. I got a couple, intro welcome emails at the beginning, and then I just unsubscribed from all the lists, and they don't send me anything, and it does not appear that they sold my email anywhere. So that's good. And I can log into it whenever I want, and it'll show me, 12 new scholarships that have deadlines coming up you could be eligible for. And then you click on it and you see more information. Just a reminder with external or any scholarships, protect your private info, never give anyone any money, never pay any fees. Don't ever give out your your social security number. And one thing that happens with essay contests, you'll see, especially with FastWeb and scholarships.com, you'll see a lot of essay contests, which you could do, but sometimes they're asking for permission to print your information, even if they don't give you the scholarship. And our foundation, Prairie State's foundation director, has told me that that's kind of weird, and she would not recommend those essay contests. And others are more legitimate. Scholly, I don't know if you guys have heard about it. The creator of Scholly was on Shark Tank, an episode of that show a few years ago. And he found millions of dollars when he was going to school or getting ready to go to college. He wrote up his essays on a phone. He did his research at a library. He did not have resources, and he was awarded millions of dollars of scholarships. And he wanted to make it easier for other people to find scholarships. So he created this search service. So that's something you could be thinking about. Just so when you're looking at outside scholarships, usually they're going to be smaller than the things you get from a university to attend with them. Outside scholarships are usually $500, $1,000, or $2,000. There's always exception, but don't dismiss the smaller amounts because every penny helps. Prioritize the bigger ones you qualify for, but if you have time, you've done all your applications, go for the smaller ones too. Sometimes people aren't applying for them, and you could have a better chance. There are some big scholarships, and I always want students to know about it. So those bottom two bullet points, the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation, the undergraduate transfer scholarship, is for students who have only attended a community college. The last time I checked, the income level was a family income of $95,000 or less. It is worth up to $40,000 a year for up to 3 years. A student has to have only attended a community college and be applying during their sophomore year and be ready to be at the university for the very first time the next fall as a junior. In 2013, 2 Prairie State graduates did get that scholarship, and they've gone on. And last I heard, one of them, he should be done with his graduate now. He worked for a while and then went on to graduate school. We have had Prairie State students become semifinalists for this the last 2 years. Semifinalist is a great designation, but you don't get the money. However, applying to that is still good because the students that got it recognized, this is a huge recognition to be chosen, even as a semifinalist for the Jack Kent Cooke Scholarship. Those students, many of them went on to universities that the universities instead gave them full or almost full scholarships. One is now at Johns Hopkins University. Another couple of them are at Stanford now. So just possible things. If that is a route you want to take, I'm going to mention again the guest speaker in the series about schools with no loan policies. And either if you're going to need to be applying in the next year, you should get the videos from me, contact me. If you're not applying to universities in the next year, then I hope you can come to the sessions live the next time we're able to hold them. The last bullet point, the Phi Theta Kappa, it keeps coming up because it's a great way of nationally distinguishing yourself. It's a national recognition. The organization Phi Theta Kappa has scholarships, so you could be filling out one application and you could actually be applying to multiple scholarships at the same time, and those are used wherever you go to next. And then there's also university-based PTK scholarships. So I showed you the Jackson State one. That is different than the PTK organization one. So you have the links where you can be looking at things directly. I want to make sure you guys also know, I'm going to just check. Great, I just got a question. Thanks, Marcia. How do you apply for PTK scholarships? So if you follow the link for a PTK scholarship, so what I'm used to, the part that I know the best is when students are in their sophomore year, there could be more options. So join PTK, Phi Theta Kappa first. Prairie State, we have our economics professor, Professor Massengel, is the advisor to PTK, and he is a great resource. But going from the link that I have in here, you do the drop-down box for scholarships. I am transferring as the part I know the best. And the competitive scholarships, that's the one I'm talking about when I was at first, but you can also, this one, the second one, you have to have a PTK login, which I don't have, I'm not a student. But if you are a PTK student, you can log in, you can even see the specific PTK scholarships at specific universities. The competitive ones, I probably won't be able to show very much because the application for this year closed, with the deadline is passed for this year. So this one, I'm kind of prepping people who would be applying next year, who are going to be in sophomore next year. But here's where you can read more about it. This is a scholarship that just has really early deadlines, more than others. Sometimes these deadlines can be in December to use the next August. More frequently, they're around February. So I got this in really early to the semester to try to catch any of you guys, so before too many more of the deadlines pass. But here's where you could be getting into it. When they are actively taking applications, you'd be able to access the application. You start putting in your info and you see what essays you need to answer. And if you need letters of recommendation, you see all of that. Thank you for asking. All right, I want to make sure you guys know about some special unit partnerships we have with nearby universities. At Governors State University, the dual degree program is a program where if you're part of this, you meet additional requirements and apply for it, you could be competing for a full tuition scholarship for your last 2 years. In the last 10 years since we've created this program, 65 Prairie State students have gotten full tuition scholarships through it. So if you, the Promise Scholarship, if you are in DDP and you have a 2.75 GPA, you're eligible for Pell Grants, and you apply for this during your last semester before you graduate with your associate's degree, it would be for full tuition and books if you get it. Honors, if you have a 3.5 GPA, you've joined either Phi Theta Kappa or taken at least 3 of our honors classes from the honors program. And you apply for this during your last semester, finishing up your associate's degree and get it, then it's full tuition. DACA students get the full tuition benefit for honors, but the Promise one, it only covers books if you're a DACA student. To be eligible for the dual degree program, you just need a 2.0, but to be eligible for the scholarships, you need the extra parts. For the program, just a quick heads up, the dual degree program is one where you are committing to earning your associate's degree at Prairie State before you transfer, moving on to GSU the next fall or spring after you graduate, and finish up your bachelor's. So it's talking about associates and bachelor's are the 2 degrees. And if you have a 2.0 GPA, you join before you've completed more than 45 credits at Prairie State, and you plan to take at least, and you'll be taking at least 12 credits every fall and spring. You just need to meet with the GSU transfer specialist once a semester to let them know what classes you're taking, make sure you're still going towards the same major. And she gives you an advising plan and just gives you extra advice and assistance to let you know you're on track to all the way through your bachelor's degree. So the program, the big benefit is, of course, the tuition, scholarships to go for that, but you get early advising. Everybody gets early advising for GSU. Everybody gets an early lock-in of their future GSU tuition. So if you are a freshman and you're going to be here for 2 years, this year, next year, and then heading to GSU, or you have any chance you would, if you qualify and join DVP right now, you can lock in this year's rate. And if GSU raises its rates next year and the year after before you transfer, it usually raises the rates each fall. If they raise the rate, they won't be charging you the higher future rate. If you join DVP and you just stay on track with the rules, you would be charged this year's rate. And by locking in tuition early, that last bullet point, the average DDP student saves $2,000 in just lower tuition costs over their last 2 years. So the ones that don't get the scholarship usually still save money because of freezing their tuition rate early. We also have a similar program with St. Xavier. It's new. We just created it in the last year. So a lot of things are similar. Early advising from St. Xavier. They have extra scholarship opportunities. There is a full tuition scholarship you can compete for, and they have it at a 2.75 GPA or higher, and it does require an application during your last semester before you earn your associates. Everyone who's in the St. Xavier one, so they don't freeze tuition. So instead, they created an extra $1,000 scholarship. So they have automatic scholarships for GPA. I think their highest auto scholarship outside of this program, if you're a transfer student, is $16,000, I think. If you have PTK, it's an extra $1,000 or $2,000. And if you join this program and stay in it before you transfer, you could get another extra $1,000 stacked on and renewed each year as you finish out there. So it's very similar to GSU. You need a 2.0 or higher, 45 credits or less before you sign up, completed or less, and be full-time when you're headed to St. Xavier. And you need to meet with a St. Xavier person once a semester so that you're on track. All right, there's another concept that's really been expanding, especially in the state of Illinois. I love it. And it's free tuition programs. It's universities that if you are admitted to the school and you meet certain eligibility, usually income requirements, and you've done the documentation, so that's getting your FAFSA to them by certain deadline and meeting their requirements, you could qualify for free tuition. Eureka College was one of the first ones. They're pretty much right in the middle of the state. So if you wanted to go to a small private university, live on campus, this would take care of your tuition. These free tuition programs, though, anything you qualify for MAP and Pell, they will put towards the tuition, and then you need to be looking for outside scholarships or be prepared to pay for or take out loans for your other costs, housing, books, etc. That's the way they usually work. So the Uniquely Eureka Promise, and I just want to show you as an example. I won't have time to show you guys all of the program requirements, but if you complete an associate's degree with a 2.8 GPA or higher, you're a current Illinois resident or US citizen for at least 1 year. Here's where the income part hits. If you're eligible, if your family's EFC is $1,000 or less, and you're eligible to get MAP and Pell from FAFSA. So then this is like deadlines of when you need to get information in. And you will see a January 1st deadline. Don't let deadlines stop you. It is very possible a lot of schools are always doing extensions or making exceptions. Not everyone does, but if you are graduating this year and you would otherwise qualify and you're interested in this, reach out. Chris Robinson, his information is right here at the bottom. He and I email, and talk. Actually, he's going to refer you to someone else. He's updated. He's moved on to a new role, but he is a colleague who's running the program now. But they will help you and find out if they will extend that. If you missed a deadline, don't let that stop you from asking to see if you can still apply and be considered. Okay. So you'd want to check out things like that. So Lake Forest College also has a similar thing. The Forrester flagship is kind of like Eureka Promise, where if you meet certain qualifications, get the documentation in by a certain date, you could be potentially getting free tuition. Lake Forest College is a small private school in the northern suburbs. It's around like Lake Forest, Illinois. They are normally about $48,000, $49,000 a year was their tuition when I looked last. So this is a really amazing thing. If anyone is pre-med, Lake Forest College has amazing rates on their graduates getting into med school. In the United States, the average school, like their pre-med students who apply to go to medical school and are actually accepted, it's about 40%, 41%, I think is what I heard last. At Lake Forest College, their pre-med students, 80% in recent history have gotten into medical school. They have pretty much twice the success of their pre-med students getting into medical school than the average US school. If you were DACA, if DACA or undocumented student, they have a program where you could be getting funding up to $40,000 a year. So then that would still be, there would be some out-of-pocket costs in then commuting or living on campus, but something to think about. I understand we've had students go there. One of our students who got the Jack Kent Cooke Scholarship, the one that's worth up to $40,000 a year, she went there and she was pre-med, and they even created research experiences to make sure she had that for when she was applying to med school later. And then I've had other students go there. They told me, and even commute. So they do prefer you to live on campus, but commuting, I've had at least one student do that. University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign has two programs. The Promise one is newer and gets advertised more. More people qualify for it. If your family income, did not mean to advance that. I clicked in the wrong space. If your family income, if you meet the criteria and your family income is below 67,000, I believe. So you'll go on, you guys can, I'm gonna have to go through my info a little more quickly than I wanted to, so I'm gonna get out of there. But if you meet the income level, which a lot of people I know qualify for that, then you could be looking at getting free tuition at U of I Urbana. The commitment program is, I mixed them up. So commitment is tuition specifically, Promise is tuition and housing. So the commitment, most people qualify for. The Promise has a much lower income level to be eligible. But if you are, and I've had students get in there that qualified for Promise, and so that would be free tuition, free housing and board also. So could be a full ride. Southern at Carbondale is an example. They've also created a free tuition program that are similar. So if your income level, you get in, you get all the documentation in by a deadline, you could be qualifying for free tuition. And then I mentioned, to make sure, I know I talked about University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and that there are about 70 universities throughout the United States with no loan policies. I know I mentioned that earlier. I also put it in here. I just wanted to make sure I did not forget to talk about it. So I have a guest speaker who's trying to come. We're trying to arrange for him to come back for spring, who has gone deep into the research of this. He and I present the information together. So, but we haven't been able to set a date for this semester yet. So if you are applying to universities in the next 12 months and you're interested in this, email me for the recordings of when we spoke last semester. If you're not applying to universities in the next 12 months, I hope you can go to the live session. Yes. And then I also always want to encourage people to consider out of state, especially neighboring out of states. A lot of them do discounted tuition for Illinois residents. Indiana University Northwest is an example I put in there. This current school year, their discounted tuition for Illinois residents is $11,400. That's for a year to be full-time. In a comparison, that actually makes them a little bit less than attending GSU. So sometimes, not always, but sometimes going out of state especially if if you're just going off of the basic tuition. If you're not looking at the scholarships, sometimes it can cost less. Staying in state, though, the Illinois public universities have been expanding the scholarship money. So even though like GSU is around $13,000 a year and IUN is $11,000, if you're a student that qualifies for and gets AIM High, then you just got $6,000 off at GSU that you wouldn't get at another school because it's their scholarship, and then they're only about $7,000 a year. So the details of that, it gets a little murky. So I'm glad you guys are here so you can look at these resources and you can start having these next step conversations. So learning about the info from me, getting on the websites and reading about it, but don't spend too much time on the websites. Spend enough that you start to understand it and follow up with the universities. Make a connection with their admissions officers. Before I go off of this slide, I'm starting to move into something else. The Midwest Student Exchange Program is a website where you can see states nearby us. We're part of a group. Illinois is part of a group. Or if you get on this website, put down that you're an Illinois resident, and you can get a list of schools that have discounted tuition. And there's links where you can click and get more detail to see how much your approximate tuition would be expected to be. Okay. And before I go off of that, because I don't have a visual for it, so those next steps, so you're learning about this, you're reading about this stuff. I said follow up. So make a connection with the university admissions offices. So usually you can live chat with them, you can call and email. Some schools, quite a few of them, you can do video appointments. The fairs, so that very first few slides that I had at the beginning, and the college fairs. So if you go to the college fairs, that's a chance to connect with them. There's just so many ways, but you don't have to wait for these things. Get on their websites and start emailing or calling them if you have questions and want to get clarification of the information you're finding. Okay, I have a couple other things I want to show you. So I'm going to do this backwards. So the bottom two things where it says check out Prairie State. So I have a whole series of web pages on Prairie State's webpage for transfer students, and that's transfer students transferring on, going on for your bachelor's degree. So that very bottom link of this webpage or of this presentation is how to get to those. Over on the right-hand side, you can see all kinds of information, including how your classes are matched to classes at many universities in the state and also through the country. Now, it's a select list. Not all schools publish it where I can get it linked on our website. But you can be looking throughout the country for transfer. So the web pages are great. If anyone is a STEM major, so science, technology, engineering, or math, our STEM faculty and academic departments have put together extra scholarship guidance and information for you. It's similar to things you'll find in the search engine, but things can get missed, so it's always good to look in multiple places. And then the last thing, but I have it on the top of the page, is the scholarship information handout. I have a handout I developed a few years ago, and I will include this in the follow-up email so that you guys can have it. Some of these things that you will see on this handout I already talked about in more detail in the presentation, but some were not in it because of just lack of time. You can't go through everything. So this is a good thing to be looking at too. This handout is focused on programs that are the biggest transfer scholarships or free tuition programs for community college graduates. There are so many things out there. There are partial scholarships everywhere. But like these really big programs and the ones that give out bigger amounts, like it's not like we only give out one, but the ones that are likely to give out more. So as you look down, you'll see the Eureka and GSU DDP programs. I know I talked about, so Northeastern and Southern, these both have scholarships, full tuition scholarships for transfer students who were PTK while they were at their community college. And I actually had one student be awarded the one at Southern last year. It's just great. So Jackson State, I know I showed you an example already. If anyone's headed to Columbia College, they only give, I believe, one full tuition, and then they give several $10,000 scholarships. It's selective though. They do not do the automatic. They do applications, and it's not for everyone. It's not automatic. Some schools do it differently. On the second page of this handout are kind of just some other programs that can give large amounts of money or just kind of unique. So this first bullet point is talking about the no loan, those 70 schools approximately that have no loan promises. Just kind of gives you an overview of talking about it. And examples I've given in here, recent Prairie State graduates have gotten into all of those schools, and they were either fully covered or covered everything except for the amount their family was expected to pay, plus work study. So being fully covered, it is common that they build work study into that. Work study can be a really great thing. It's a job, it's money that you get to keep and you decide what to do with the money. Usually they try to put you into a job, or you will want to look for a job where it is actually adding to your education even more. I worked on my campus when I was getting my bachelor's degree, and the people I met there, my boss was later a recommendation for me getting into graduate school. The experience I had in my job while on campus helped me get my first job out of college. It absolutely was why I was qualified. So there's a lot of good stuff. So there's going to be some repetition, and then there's also some new things. So I will share this handout in my follow-up email to all of you. And then lastly, just my information, my email, so you guys know how to get a hold of me. And I'm just going to turn it over to, I'm going to actually turn off the recording.